fired. What a privilege it is. Midlife crisis MBA, hard to differentiate yourself in an increasingly insecure world. It's an incredibly wide-based pyramid for the inevitability that they're going to go out into the real world, crying out for £1 billion of acquisition in cybersecurity.
Welcome to Season 6 of Between Meetings. This season is all about Alberta's investment landscape. I'm your host, Marian Dunker. In today's episode, I'm joined by Adam Cragg, partner at Osney Capital. Adam has worked with startups through innovation hubs and universities like MIT, NYU, and the University of Calgary before moving into venture capital. We talk about what it takes to turn research into real companies, why Osney is focused on cybersecurity, and how he's building bridges and spotting opportunities between the UK and Canada. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time. Welcome to Between Meetings.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You work with a number of startups for quite a long time in different ways through innovation hubs, university programs like NYU, MIT. What are the learnings from that time and what shaped your way to venture capital?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that's really excited me during my time supporting university entrepreneurship programs is what a privilege it is. You get to play a small part in what can be a transformative time in these young adults' lives. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship as a tool to help people have more autonomy over their careers, especially as we all work in an increasingly insecure world where the idea that people have one job out of university and are there for 30 years is totally gone. People are going to have the skills internally to job hunt and to be more self-reliant, and I think entrepreneurship gives people that ability. And I think that as people are leaving university, if they've dabbled in entrepreneurship, if they've experimented with starting a business, of hiring people, of finding product market fit, even if their startup doesn't become anything, they can accelerate their career as they leave university.
Interesting. How did you end up in the venture world?
So I met a couple guys while I was doing a midlife crisis MBA. I tried to identify what's the market need. So how can we differentiate ourselves from all the other VCs that are out there? Tried to look at where we had a differentiated right to access good deals. Landed on cybersecurity, which was an interesting overlap of the skills and backgrounds of the three founders. I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed while working at university is the opportunity to work with hundreds of founders and entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. And I think as you're building out your pattern recognition as a VC, that opportunity that I had over 15 years of working with university entrepreneurship programs and seeing hundreds of entrepreneurs and their struggles and seeing behind the curtain, I think that improves my ability to understand and identify exciting entrepreneurs as they start their businesses.
You work a number of years with Innovate Calgary at the University of Calgary. So what lessons did you take from that time? And I'm really curious to know, what do you think are still the biggest struggle for the university to take companies to become viable companies?
Well, I think there's two big things that universities need to continue to improve on to best support entrepreneurs. One is that a lot of the systems of universities are set up to make more academics. A lot of the programs that PhDs go through are assuming that they will become academics in their own right, and most of them will not. It's an incredibly wide-based pyramid to get into academia. And so one of my talking points at universities that I've worked at is we need to do things to upskill these PhD students for the inevitability that they're going to go out into the real world and not be academics. So there's a slight disconnect there in a lot of the programs and how professors are rewarded for their time supporting PhD students. The other thing that I think universities really need to continue to improve on is shortening the distance between industry and the innovation that happens. I think you get a lot of really talented entrepreneurs, but if you've gone straight through grade school to undergrad to graduate to PhD, you might not have that depth of industry experience to understand how companies think about solving problems, how they think about adopting new technologies. And so as much as possible, baking in that industry connection to the labs is a real opportunity to accelerate the practical application of that novel IP towards its impact in the world.
Now you're a partner at Osney Capital, entirely focusing on cybersecurity and backing UK-based startups. First of all, why cybersecurity? And you have the goal to invest in 30 companies. That's a lot of companies in one space. How do you think about the portfolio construction?
Well, cybersecurity is an incredibly exciting space for an early stage investor. The velocity of the startups is incredible. The ability of startups to have good exits that don't rely on IPOs through the acquisition landscapes. There's been £1 billion of acquisition in cybersecurity every week for the last 5 years. Companies are routinely acquired for 10, 20, 100 times ARR. And for an early stage investor, I think that's really appealing because you don't have to wait for this IPOs that are increasingly really few and far between. There's a really exciting enterprise value exit of $500 million, which for an early stage investor is the dream. But a lot of the bigger incumbent investors, that's not enough. I spoke with a big investor recently that joked that if his portfolio companies exited for $500 million, he'd be fired. And so that's sort of the scalpel that we built Osney around, was that early stage, getting in at 3 to 5 million post the pre-money, but that pathway towards hopefully 300 to 500 million acquisition.
When you meet founders, what are the top things that you're looking for before you deciding to invest?
I think people that really understand the problem. I think, especially in cybersecurity, the innovation is moving so quickly that it can be hard to differentiate yourself. So one of the things we're looking at now is, what does AI agentic security look like? There's a lot of people going after that space. When we meet with founders, it's important to us to understand, why do they have a unique insight that's going to allow them to make up for the fact that they have nowhere near as many resources as a big incumbent player. And that sort of scalpel of go-to-market, that scalpel of insight, I think is a crux for a startup to be relevant against really well-capitalized incumbent players.
Lots of VCs talking about building the relationship with founders. So what are your best approaches? How do you think about building the relationship with founders? What's important for you?
We really like to meet founders before they're ready to raise money, to see if we can help as they go to that product market fit, help identify pilot partners, pilot design partners. We do a lot of work with early stage accelerators, with founders that are maybe 6 months to a year to 18 months away from formally kicking off their fundraising. But we think we can support them in getting ready and avoiding some of the pitfalls that a first-time entrepreneur especially can make, which is just driven by a bit of that pattern recognition that I talked about, and allowing founders to avoid mistakes so that they can move as quickly as possible, because things are easier to do right the first time than they are to correct. But sometimes for a first-time entrepreneur especially, they might not know what those pitfalls are. So providing a bit of value in an open-handed way, meeting with them 6 months to a year before they go to raise money, trying to connect them with design partners. Hopefully they keep us in mind as they go forward and look to raise money.
Mm-hmm. You've got foot in both ecosystems, Canada and the UK. How do you compare the two when it comes to investment in startups, especially in cybersecurity?
So the two ecosystems, I think, are quite analogous in cybersecurity. I think the UK is a bit further along. Globally, the two ecosystems that have been dominant in cybersecurity are America and Israel. Mm-hmm. And with a lot of the geopolitical tensions that are going on, with a lot of the sovereign compute conversations that are happening, there is a crying out for more ecosystems to build their capacity around cybersecurity. I think the UK will be a big part of that, but I think there's a real opportunity for Canada, especially with a lot of the soft power that Canada enjoys, to be a leader in cybersecurity and try and export their companies globally in a way that that opportunity may have been opened up by some of the geopolitical changes that are happening in the States.
Adam, you have the experience of building the VC fund, which is kind of a unique experience. What other trends, opportunities, and challenges do you see?
I think one of the things we really saw as we were fundraising for the fund was how LP appetite is moving quite quickly. We see a polarization of LPs wanting to do either giant funds where you're investing in everything under the sun, you're sort of getting an index of early stage startup activity. And on the other side of that spectrum is the emergence of new managers with very focused thesis. And I think one of the things that's interesting to LPs as they look at those emerging managers is what's the right to win that these new VC firms have. If you're a generalist boutique VC fund, why are you able to get into the most competitive deals? Why does a founder get excited about taking your money over somebody else's money? And I think that while there are obviously exceptional boutique generalist funds, for a net new entrant, it's a lot harder question to answer, where if you're focused and if your whole network is focused around one specific industry or one group of technologies, your ability to connect that founder into important decision makers in industry, to mentors, to other investors that will resonate with what they're doing is that much easier, right? So we think that given our fund size, our focus allows us to add value and have connections as if we were a much bigger fund, because cybersecurity is all we do.
What trends in cybersecurity and deep tech broader landscape are you most excited about over the next few years?
I think over the next few years, you'd be hard pressed to find an investor that doesn't answer that question with AI. I think that the promise has been there for a long time, but we're really starting to see it pay off. I think it's going to transform how most businesses operate. But one of the things it really does transform is the sophistication of bad actors. So it is easier than ever before to upskill yourself using AI. Some people are using that for good things, and some people are using that for bad things. And whenever you have a new technology like AI that is being so quickly rolled out by new companies, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but I think something like 75% of all businesses now have elements of AI, where a few years ago it would have been order of magnitude lower. And when you have such rapid adoption of new technology, you're injecting risk into a system. And so as a cybersecurity fund, we're really focused on how do we help secure that new suite of technologies, because especially in AI, there's this interesting tension where companies are implementing AI as quickly as possible to stay commercially competitive. And one of the things that there's a tension with there is making sure that that AI is secure. So new tools that allow companies to adopt AI and rely on it and give it more autonomy while maintaining security, I think is a big area of focus for us.
Adam, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Thank you so much for this conversation. I wish you many successful investments and exits.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.